Good afternoon. My name is Inger Stark and I work at the Peralta Colleges in Oakland, and I am part of the equity team there and also one of the co-coordinators of the conference. Today's our last day of the conference and we're doing a presentation this afternoon, a couple of logistics. The closed caption option is turned on in the Zoom. There is a little toggle on the bottom of your screen. If you would like captioning, you can just hit that toggle to turn the captions for you on. We are recording, so be aware of that. And also, we encourage you to participate in the chat. The presenters specifically asked as you join if you might let them know where you're from in the chat, who you are, where you're from, what you do. And the moderators who are here will kind of keep an eye on it also in case they miss anything. We could feed that to them at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn it right over to the presenters and let them introduce themselves and their presentation today.
Welcome, everybody. We're glad to see you here. Several of you have worked on the collaborative, so it's really good. I'm here with Jeff Suarez-Grant, Cal State, LA. My name is Sally Baldwin. I come from a variety of California community colleges. Alejandra Pickett is with SUNY Online, and Ashlie Sarsgard is University of Maryland. And I'm going to switch the slide, please. Today, we're going to start off and ask you to participate in a quick group introduction via Menti. We're going to let you know about our project, how we work, show off what we've got so far, and leave you with stuff to enjoy about the project.
I'm going to transition it here in just a quick second over to Alex, who's going to run the Mentimeter poll. And there's 2 questions there. So Alex, I'm going to go and stop sharing and hand it over to you.
All right. So thanks, Ashlie, for popping the link in the chat. I see you did that. And so you can just go to that link and I'm sharing my screen here and you'll see this set of questions. And so just go ahead and let us know which online course quality rubric you may happen to use, or if you don't use one or use a different one, there's options for that as well. And then we'll look at the results here. And so these are live results from your input. Give it a couple of minutes for people to give their votes. So we have a few quality matters. We have a whole bunch of CVC OEI, some COLT, some other ones, and no Oscar. Nobody knows about Oscar. I'll share a link later so that you can learn about Oscar. And there's others. So there's a couple of other ones in the chat. If you use a different rubric than those that are listed there, I'd love to see which ones you use. So you could pop it in the chat and let us know. It might be your own homegrown checklist. A lot of us do that. So yeah, that'd be cool. All right, so I think I've got everybody. Let's do the next slide. And you can keep voting on that. That's still open, but we'll do the next slide. And this is just to kind of get a pulse from you all of when you are thinking about infusing DEI into your online course or into your instruction. How does it make you feel? And all you have to do is, put in your top 3 keywords and they'll pop up here. It should pop up here. There we go. So yeah, skeptical, excited, happy, requires time, reflective, novice, motivated, unsure, yeah, a whole range of types of feelings when we're doing this work. It's interesting that excited means that a lot of multiple people put the word excited in, so that's cool. Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your feelings with us. We're really excited to be here today to talk with you about our project and to share with you a little bit about how we feel about this work. I think I'll stop sharing now, Jeff, and turn it over to the next one. Thanks for participating in that icebreaker.
Thanks, Alex. So moving along here, we always like to recognize kind of the work that we're kind of building on. When we first started our project, there were some, early kind of initiatives to embed diversity, equity, inclusion into online course design. That was happening kind of at the CSU with the quality learning and teaching rubric, QM with the bridge to quality. The 7th edition of the rubric is coming out July 5th. One of the stated goals of the rubric update committee was to more intentionally address diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then, of course, there are what you might call like equity first rubrics that are dedicated just to diversity, equity, inclusion. Of course, Peralta. There's also the course design and equity inclusion rubric from Melissa Coe. There's a new initiative from the University of California, the IDFS Diversity, Equity, Inclusion course design rubric that looks pretty amazing and interesting. And then, Alex, I think you're more familiar with the equity equation one.
So Every Learner Everywhere is an organization that is also doing some excellent work in this space. And I put a link in the chat to their equity equation. And then the Online Learning Consortium, which is an association for those interested in online teaching and learning, actually has a diversity, equity, and inclusion task group that is doing some work in that space as well. So there's a variety of activities and initiatives and organizations going on, that are working in this space.
And so as our group thought to how we were going to contribute to these efforts to more intentionally address diversity, equity, inclusion in online course design, we were thinking more specifically about creating detailed kind of guidance and strategies. So what we're essentially trying to pair together are course design standards from a variety of different rubrics. So our project is really rubric agnostic in a lot of ways, or it addresses lots of different rubrics, including OSCAR, COLT, QM, CVC OEI, and others as we become aware of them and we can program the coding for that. And then on the other side, we've got all of these amazing inclusive teaching practices, but what's sometimes missing is okay, how do I do that? How do I connect these and how do I modify my course design to more intentionally address DEI? And so that's really what our project is about. And again, just kind of giving you some overall context for this work is the creation of these annotations, which provides detailed guidance and strategies on how to actually do it. I just want to briefly describe also how we work. We have a lot of folks, Sally will share the exact number in just a second here, but we have a lot of folks from across the US and also internationally as well. Rafael is one of my group members in group 3. He's actually from Brazil and is joining us. And so we work with small writing groups each month. We are working in kind of a sprint style architecture, where each month groups are assigned a new DEI practice to draw up and write up the annotation, which includes that specific guidance and the specific strategies. And so far we've gotten through about 5 sprints. And so that there's about 54 total inclusive teaching practices. And so we're about 65% of the way through. 35 practices have been drafted. We have 13 writing teams. And we meet monthly to share and collaborate. The teams kind of work asynchronously or meet live and through Zoom, but then we all meet together monthly to exchange practices and get some peer feedback from other groups so that we can, kind of just get a quick little check to make sure that we're heading in the right direction with the practices that we're writing up. We just assigned sprint 6, so I'm looking forward to our next meeting in May to kind of see what those practices look like. I'm going to turn it over to Sally now to talk more about our members and our project collaborators.
We're just short of 100 folks that have been involved in this project. And it's been amazing because we have instructors, instructional designers, DEI experts. And I know in my own group, Anita's here with us today on this call. The range of expertise has been phenomenal in adding to being able to flesh out these practices. And it's really made all the difference for helping us succeed.
And we'd like to show you a little bit of what we've actually finished. I think in our last year's Peralta Equity Conference, we shared a very, very rough version of our online platform. And we're happy to report that we have completed 6 highly polished entries for the platform. And thanks, Ashlie, for sharing that in the chat. And what I'll do is I'll just quickly give you a quick demonstration. If you're new to the project, you haven't seen it before, I'll just quickly show you how to kind of navigate it. And then we're going to spend the rest of our time today kind of taking a deep dive, looking at some of the practices and really getting some feedback from you all. Something that we're very curious about is not only getting some feedback on the practices, the guidance and the strategies, but also kind of the user experience of navigating the platform. Because if it's too hard to navigate and you can't answer the questions that you have, then this is all for nothing, right? So let me go and switch my browser tab here a little bit just to kind of go back over. This is the link that Ashlie shared in the chat. And Ashley's going to kind of take us through a deep dive on one of the practices, kind of look at the structure and how it's been written. But I'm just going to first kind of show you the different views and the ways of kind of navigating and diving in. So I want to kind of just give the example of, you know, I'm an instructional designer. I've got a faculty in my office who's kind of curious about, like, what can I do with in terms of my, you know, contact with students? How can I help to better engage with them and kind of, you know, establish warmer relationships with my students? So, and I'm also a California Community College faculty member. So what I can actually do is come over here to the CVC OEI tab, which is a dedicated view just for this particular rubric. And then that means that all of these menus are customized to this particular rubric. And I can come over here. And my understanding is that there are subgroups for the CVC OEI rubric. And my concern here is instructor contact with students. So I can go ahead and filter this down, make this a little bit bigger. And I can go ahead and whittle the practices down to ones that just deal with instructor contact. And maybe this one here kind of catches my eye, build rapport with learners. I can go and click on this, pops open. For our purposes here, I'm going to open it full screen so we can see it a little bit better. And you can see, you know, we've got some keywords here about who this particular practice may benefit, whether it's design or facilitation, and then also all the specific kind of course design practices that this build rapport with learners DEI practice kind of connects with. So it's something that can be done in the instructor introduction when students introduce themselves, are interacting with one another, and also kind of get started tasks. And then here's the entry. Here's the DEI practice with all the specific details and guidance. Start with this kind of general overall aspirational kind of goal statement about what we hope students will be able to feel or achieve as a result of successful implementation of this practice. We start with concrete things that folks can do, and then we get more and more detailed. There's an overview, how to implement it, and of course, considerations for different modalities as well. So Ashlie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you want me to still drive and you can kind of narrate, or do you want to take over?
Sure, if you can actually keep driving, that would be great.
Sounds good. I will drive. All right, so I think we were going to take a look at, which one was it?
Yeah, that one that you're hovering over, we're gonna look at discover social and cultural identities of learners. Can everyone hear me okay? Is that good? Great, okay. So if you scroll down just a little bit, Jeff, so yeah, right there, thank you. So you'll see this first call out box here, right under the title of the practice, discover social and cultural identities of learners with the little light bulb. This is what we think of as an inspirational outcome statement. And feel free, you know, since you have the link, you're free to, of course, like read through this yourself while I'm talking. I'm just giving a basic overview before we go into a discussion. So this one, you know, inspirationally focuses on helping learners to feel encouraged to share and celebrate, you know, the diversity of identities that are represented in the class among their peers and their instructor. through these opportunities to explore, social and cultural identities. And so this section here of the specific techniques, as Jeff mentioned, you'll see the first one, for instance, is ask learners to complete a cajita project, sharing their culture, background, and traditions through artifacts that are of value to them. If you scroll down, actually, Jeff, to under the overview where you see how to implement the practice, the group who put this together went into detail on how to implement the cajita project. And the idea is that for all of those specific techniques, there's more detail in this how to implement section. So you can see here, they have a lot of great suggestions in terms of, learners putting these objects in a box and then how they might share with one another and reflect, asking questions of themselves, where did they originate from, what makes these items important, what makes them special in order or in terms of, their personal origin, and, did they find them on a trip, something like that. So they can present that through a video project or just reflecting on a discussion board. And so you can scroll back up to the other specific techniques now. Thanks. So you'll see some others here in terms of, is there a community discussion board for learners to share with? How might learners share values in the co-creation of class norms? Like I really love that one and how it sort of incorporates their social and cultural identity in, class norms. I'm just skipping around a little bit. Selecting icebreakers that promote sharing in a safe space and in small groups that learners might feel comfortable then talking about their social and cultural identities. And if you look down at the overview a little bit, if you want to just scroll there, I think, this one, it's really leaning into promoting this practice as a means of social emotional learning in a course. It just in this first paragraph, for instance, it talks about that, and then also talks about how this helps to build cohesiveness and good peer relationships, solid peer relationships in the course. And then these other two paragraphs talk about, how it benefits both learners and instructors personally, that it benefits all of them. And then in terms of learners also learning from other people's perspectives in terms of the content of the course, and then how instructors are also helped by learning about the students in the course and how they can then leverage that information in order to help guide students and help students thrive. So we wanted to ask, I guess, can you share the slide again? So as you're all, sort of thinking about this practice, things you might do to help learners, discover and share their social and cultural identities, we wanted to ask everyone, how might you apply this practice at your institution or organization? Just thinking about how it might be implemented in a unique way where you are. And I noticed that someone was from New Zealand, so I was sort of hoping to hear from that person because I'm sure it's such a different, cultural experience than what we have here. And you can feel free to share in the chat as well. I think somebody has a hand raised.
I think I saw Kevin's hand there for a second.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, feel
So
free to unmute.
it's probably faster to say than type, but I teach a course. It's an undergraduate general education course called How to Learn with Your Mobile Device. And as I've been using the Peralta rubric to improve my course and make it more equitable, I created an activity called Describe Yourself as a Learner. And I ask students to think about their multiple identities and how it impacts their learning, whether or not they feel like they've been having privileged with their identity or challenges that they face as a result of biases or assumptions or institutional barriers. And it was just what the students generated from that assignment was really rich. But I think a lot of them hadn't considered it before because we don't often learn how to learn. And we have a whole module about how we affect our own learning. And this was kind of a precursor about how others affect our learning too.
That's wonderful. I really love that idea. Thank you for sharing that. Sally, go ahead.
And Kevin, that made me think of something I'm doing to try and get away from the sage on the stage. I actually have been doing a very rich discussion, and I put the heart emoji and then share, and they share on the topic of the week. Rather than me push out information, folks are bringing it in, and the results have been amazing because the learners are sharing information. There's certain parameters that they have to follow, but they're sharing information that I certainly would not have chosen myself, that absolutely relate to their background or their experiences. And it's been a really great opportunity to have a rich discussion among the students, even though we're all online.
I noticed somebody in the chat jumped ahead to talk about like a challenge. So we'll get to that, I guess. Did anybody else want to share just about how you might apply the practice at your institution, or even moving into the next question, what other ideas have you used in your own instruction to address this practice, which is some of what we're discussing?
I guess in my class, hi, it's Alejandra. I model the behaviors that I want the students to. So when I do my "Who are you?" introductory activity, I share things about myself that are not just my professional identity, but also my identity, my other identities as well, to show that I'm a multidimensional human, and to build trust and to build a sense of community with folks. And when I do it, that then gives them permission to do that, and they kind of get a sense, even if I write out what the expectations are, when they see me do it, they then feel, and I do it in a variety of ways. I do it in video, I do it in text, and I also do it in audio, and I sometimes use avatars. I've found some cool, tools that you can make yourself into different identities and adopt an avatar, for example. And when they see me do it, then they get super creative in how they represent themselves digitally. And it's partly an exercise to help them understand that they can present themselves in a variety of ways digitally, even if they don't want to show physically who they are. There's lots of different ways that they can really communicate their identity using different tools, right? So that's how I do it.
Sally, you're muted. Okay, one moment.
I hit the little pen instead of
No problem.
I actually, as I've been attending this conference the last couple of days, several people have mentioned the importance of highlighting services that your institution offers. And I think to address the comment in the chat about creating and maintaining a safe space, students need to feel that they are safe and that their basic needs are being met before they can actually share more about themselves and feel comfortable, I suspect. And so part of the groundwork for this practice may also be ensuring that those services are present in our syllabus, and also helping students understand how to actually take advantage of the services that are offered. That it's building up, it's like a hierarchy of needs. Before you can do this, you need to do this. I learned that this week at Peralta.
Thank you. I guess let's go ahead and, yeah, think some more about challenges in implementing the practice.
Before you go on, Ashley, I
Oh, yeah,
wanted to
please.
mention that in the goodie bag that you all will have access to, there is a syllabus template. And in that syllabus template, there's a section that talks about basic needs, really reinforcing what Sally was just talking about, that it's Maslow's before Bloom's, right? We want to make sure that students feel like we are aware of and understanding of and wanting to support with student services that might be available on the campus, their basic needs. So I'm looking for the link right now and I'll pop it in the chat when I find it.
Thank you. So in terms of, right, any other challenges that people can think of in terms of implementing this type of practice? Do you want to go back to the practice, Jeff? So along the lines of, I guess, right, what was mentioned about creating and maintaining a safe space, we had presented on this for OLC, and somebody had mentioned, the sort of political climate in terms of, if you're at an institution where you might not be able to directly do this, or where students may, right, like not feel like it's a safe space because it's really not allowed, to discuss certain things. And so somebody had suggested, and it says here, like, about selecting activities that provide choice. This is the last bullet under specific techniques. I think like choice, right, seems to be a good way to address challenges like that, because you're providing multiple ways that students might participate. Yeah, not requiring students to divulge details about themselves they don't want to. Great. So Jeff, do you want to go to, did anybody have anything else they wanted to just mention about this before we move on to another practice? Okay. Jeff, do you want to go back to the build rapport practice? Great, thanks. So we'll talk about this one a little bit as well. And really, so I think Jeff mentioned, right? So these 6 that are here that you have to look at, they're fairly finished. We're still revising them some, but they're, almost there. And I think our goal is that by probably mid to late June, we'll have, 10 fully finished practices to share. So, so this one, build rapport with learners, and this was one that the group that Sally is a part of did. Here you can see the
And
inspirational.
Anita.
Oh, Anita's in that group too, right? You did
Yeah.
mention that. Great. The inspirational statement is about, as a result of intentional, continuous, and authentic human interaction, learners will feel a meaningful connection that develops into close rapport with the instructor and with peers. So build rapport with learners and, discovering social and cultural identities of students are sort of, trying to do along the lines of one of the same things. Like I see them almost as complementary, I guess. And here, though, this technique is something that is you know, you also see that takes place throughout a course, that it's not just a one-time thing, but that, you know, some of it happens at the beginning, and then, you know, there are some techniques that are mentioned that occur throughout. So the first couple of bullets here, you know, place a personal and professional introduction in your course and course syllabus. This is something that occurs at the beginning, you know, of a course, and as well as send a preterm introductory email. And then some of the sort of design focused things, consider multiple modes of communication, you know, to meet accessibility needs and learning preferences, adopt student-centered teaching practices. You know, this is something that really helps build rapport. And then also something at the beginning of the term, ask learners to introduce themselves, so that you and the class can get to know one another. Um, Open and transparent avenues of access to you, the instructor, for questions and comments. This is something that, you know, is throughout the term. And then proactively reaching out to learners who may need support. That's also something that would occur throughout the term. Share content and resources that may appeal to learners and align with their experiences and interests. Also something that, you know, as you are getting to know students, that would occur throughout the term. Provide personalized feedback on learners' assignments and contributions, and be present and engage with learners throughout the course in an open and exploratory fashion. And so the same thing here, you see how these specific techniques are really called out from what's below the, as part of the overview, that how to implement section. So sorry, I'm not keeping up with the chat, but okay. So how to implement it goes into this in much more detail, with a lot of other ideas for, you know, how you might do this. So what we wanted to ask again is like, how might you, so you don't need to read through this how to implement section to talk about it, but how might you implement this practice at your institution or in a course you're teaching?
I'll jump in. We had an online student forum this week, and the students mentioned how important that introduction from the instructor is, to be not just their professional formal introduction, but actually getting to know the instructor as a person. And I thought that was enlightening. And they also mentioned how they like it when the instructor says how they prefer to be addressed, and particularly if they prefer to be addressed by their first name, making it a more level relationship.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. In the overview, you'll see too, right here, one of the main sort of aspects of this is that it benefits instructors and learners by helping to, you know, dismantle those power dynamics that are in a classroom, and to establish trust, open communication pathways. It looks like somebody's hand is raised. If you want to go ahead and unmute and
This is
share.
and this is
Hi.
amazing to hearing all these practices. I just want to share, I teach ESOL, so I work with students from different backgrounds, different cultures, and I love to learn more about other cultures. So one of the things I do in my fully online classes, the first week, of course, we introduce ourselves in a discussion forum, and I always ask them also to share a picture from, you know, maybe from their families, or, you know, from their culture, or a picture they love, maybe nature or whatever, and explain why they love about that picture. And then we make comments about it. And this, since this is the first week of class, I think it creates a kind of more humanized, and also like more, you know, welcoming environment for all students, and which I love to make comments, look at the pictures, and also I encourage other students to make comments to each other. And also the other thing that makes my class might be easier because it's reading and writing class. So whatever the topic of the week is, generally, after I ask my discussion question, generally the last question is about like, how do you implement this in your culture?
And welcome to Voki.
And how is it different from, you know, the reading you just read, like, you know, and first of all, I feel like letting them know that I'm curious to know more about how they do things in their culture and in their countries is really important, because they kind of feel like they are valued. That's my, that's how I feel. And also, the other thing is about like, you know, when they ask questions to each other about those practices, they can also make connection with the content as well, because they have a chance to compare what is done in their culture and what is done in the United States, and etc. So that's one of the practices I use, and so far so good. It's working well. I feel like students are really engaged.
I really love that idea. And with the, yeah, sharing photos, that's so great. Like something that really speaks to them that they can share. And I guess, you know, so there was a question in the chat about, you know, do these techniques in general include strategies for asynchronous courses? And so what you were saying made me remember that one of the faculty members at the school where I work, which is the University of Maryland School of Social Work in Baltimore, had taught an asynchronous course also with students in Thailand and with an instructor there. So there were students in Baltimore and students in Thailand, and they used a Padlet as a tool to share photos of like it specifically was about like a vacation they'd gone on or a place they'd been that they really loved, but that was sort of the icebreaker of starting to build rapport. Yeah, but it also does coincide with that, you know, discover, you know, social and cultural identities in a really good way. Thanks. And then Anita, go ahead.
I think I have an overall comment about, as instructors, bringing our full selves into an online course. I've been doing this for 20 years. And the first course I ever taught, people said, well, how are you going to get to know your students? And I was working in counseling at the time. And I think the best evidence that I had that this can happen, you can build rapport by bringing your full self into the class, is I had a student in my online class that I had only seen face-to-face at the orientation. And she had, at the end of the semester, she had something happen in her math class. And rather than see the counselor that she had just seen for educational planning, she came to her online teacher, who she hadn't seen for 14 weeks. So if we are authentic as instructors, I think that rapport can be built in very significant ways. And the practices, I loved working on this practice, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know that. That's always a good reminder about the like bring your full self.
Ashlie,
Aspect.
it's
Yeah.
Alejandra. One of the ways that I do it or have done it, and the example I have is actually from 2014. I teach a master's level fully online course, and the course is Introduction to Online Teaching. I too have been doing this for more than 20 years. And my daughter at the time was 8 years old. She's 21 now, so this was a long time ago. And I used VoiceThread to interview her about me. So I asked her questions about me, like, what do I do for a living? What's my favorite food? How does she know that, just different sort of personal kind of questions. And so I showed myself to my students through the eyes of my 8-year-old daughter. And what I wanted to do with that activity was to, number one, break that barrier so that they could feel me and through the eyes of my 8-year-old kid, and also know that I'm not just a professor, I'm not just an expert in my discipline, but I'm also a mom. and I'm many things. I have multiple identities and multiple dimensions to the person that I am. And, so I just video this list of questions I must have gotten from some random Facebook meme or whatever, like ask your kid these questions, right? And videotape. And I did that. And then I used that video to introduce myself to my students. And so I'm going to put the link in the chat at some point. If you're interested, you can take a look at that, that activity. And in that VoiceThread, I use VoiceThread, which is a tool that, you can use. You could also do this face-to-face. You could do it, in a variety of different ways. I happen to use VoiceThread, and I also ask questions of the students to help understand who they are, right? So then they get to contribute too. So
That's wonderful. Thank you. I love that. I'll definitely look at that later. And yeah, at my institution, one of our faculty members, refers when she introduces herself to students. I know, and we use VoiceThread too. And the VoiceThread says that she's a mama PhD, which I love that, term, but it also really connects, it also really helps. We have so many students who are, also parents and are older, and, it helps them feel supported and connected as well. Yeah. So in terms of, like how, any other thoughts about this, about building rapport with learners? We've brought up some challenges, right? And I know we just have a few minutes. There was a comment in the chat about how the word continuous is important. Sometimes things jump off at great at the beginning of the semester, but continuous interaction is crucial to rapport. Yeah. And then Sally, thank you. Sally shared a link to the website. I want to also actually share, the goodie bag too. Great. Alex just shared that. And then feedback. Was someone else gonna share or say anything?
Well, I guess one other important component of this whole project is that we met via the Peralta Equity Conference. So it's pretty wonderful to be back. This is the third anniversary for us. So thank you, Peralta.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. So there's the feedback form that was in the chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to take a look at these other practices that are on that same page with the two that we talked through, and just give any feedback on the interface or any thoughts you had about navigating it, any challenges with navigating it, anything that you think you might need if you were to, use any of these. We'd love to hear.
And for the benefit of those who are watching the recording, I'm going to make sure the links that have been posted in the chat are also on the conference website. So you can get to the grab bag, you can get to the feedback form, and anything else that the DEI Collaborative team would like me to make sure gets posted.
Great.
Jeff, Alejandra, Sally, Ashlie, thank you so much. We are so glad that you came back in this configuration to share it, and I really, really hope you'll be back next year and show us how far along and how things change between now and next year. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off.